being blindsided by the previous round of strikes. What was your reaction to these new attacks?
Well, obviously, as Director General of the IAEA, I'm not informed in advance of military operations. So, of course, from that moment on, we have been following this intensively. As you know, we were part of a negotiating process. I had been invited to participate in the two last rounds of consultations, negotiations that were taking place in Geneva, mediated by the Foreign Minister of Oman, and with the participation of Dr. Kushner from the United States, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, the Foreign Minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi. So that was pretty intense, which obviously did not come to fruition.
President Trump has said that one of the reasons for these attacks is that Iran was on the verge of a bomb. From what the IAEA knows, is that the case?
Well, I would generally abstain from commenting on comments from, especially from residents. And what I can say is that the situation in Iran was concerning. Iran had not been giving for quite some time IAEA access to places, clarifying activities, and a number of things that led us to a place or a position where we lost the necessary continuity of knowledge to be able to confirm that everything in Iran was in peaceful use. So as to whether there was a short distance or a long distance to manufacturing nuclear weapons, I would not get into that, but it is clear that there were some elements of concern. Also, the accumulation of a very big stockpile of highly enriched uranium, very close to military grade degree, without any justifiable reason. So all of this painted a complicated picture.
So elements of concern, but evidence of being close to a bomb? Did you see any of that?
We cannot have evidence when we are not being given the access to places and answers to questions that we were having on a number of things. When it comes to Iran, one should perhaps not stop at the snapshot, but try to look, if possible, to the bigger picture. And in the case of Iran, there is a history spotted with moments of non-compliance, moments of hidden activities, and also moments of compliance at the time of the famous JCPOA, but also lately, in particular since late 2019 and beginning of 2020, the IAEA started to gather information about activities that were undeclared and got into a sort of dire straits with Iran to try to get information, to try to get access, and access being gradually restricted or limited. So this is why the picture is complex, very complex.
Last summer, President Trump, following the previous strikes, said the US had obliterated Iran's nuclear sites. You yourself told us that the damage had been very considerable. From that moment up until these new strikes, what extent of rebuilding had you been aware of?
We were not, again, the pattern of not giving access to the IAEA continued. We were able to reconstruct some inspection activity from last summer of 2025, I mean, until now, whereby Iran agreed, albeit difficulty.
Tell me how many subscribers.
But let's say that they agreed to allow our inspectors to go back to the non-attacked facilities. So no access to Isfahan, no access to Fordo, no access to Natanz, no access at all. We were discussing about this. There was an agreement signed in Cairo, you may remember, that was supposed to pave the way for the return of the inspectors. And that was again frustrated towards the end of the year. And until a new round of negotiations, mediated, as I said, by the Foreign Minister of Oman,
I'm not talking to you, sir.
Kicked in. And we were in this process when February 28th came.
You've stated recently that the IAEA has identified a new underground enrichment facility at Isfahan. Can you tell us about that?
Iran itself declared it last year. They declared that there was a new facility, and we immediately requested access to it. Access was granted, but we never made it to the place because the 12 they were started. And so we were not able to see what kind of facility this was, whether it was an empty hall or a place already fitted with centrifuges and cascades. So we will still need to see.
So what evidence do you have that there is an enrichment facility at this site?
None. I mean, the declaration by Iran that there is a facility and our request. So, but it is already an object of interest.
President Trump has said that Iran was trying to reconstitute its weapons program at a different site. He's talked about a new site that was under granite. Did the IAEA have evidence to show that?
Well, we were never given access to anything in this area since last year, again. So we are aware of some information, we have seen some things, but without inspecting, I mean, from the perspective of the IAEA, you may understand that I cannot speculate. It would be incorrect.
Do you know which site he's referring to?
No, not exactly. I don't know which statement from President you're talking about, but we know very well where the main sites are. It could be referring to some place that was being dug in the mountains near Natanz. It could be that.
Pickaxe Mountain.
It could be that, but I don't know. It could be that.
Were you aware of any site where Iran was trying to reconstitute its weapons?
Well, there is some activity. Whether this is aimed at that type of activity, until I inspect, I cannot say.
On Pickaxe Mountain, were you aware that there was new nuclear-related activity that was occurring?
They announced their intention to have nuclear activity there. That was not a secret either. The Iranians themselves said that, and this was part of their quite systematic intention to put their most sensitive facilities underground, which started in 2021 when there were some attacks on some R&D workshops in Natanz, and at that moment the then president of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran declared that they were going to be putting everything sensitive, his expression was the heart of the mountain or something like that. So that started this process, but without verifying, we should not speculate, I guess.
Since we last spoke, your inspectors hadn't gotten access to Pickaxe Mountain?
No.
Did the IAEA have evidence to show that?
Well, we were never given access to anything in this area since last year, again. So we are aware of some information, we have seen some things, but without inspecting, I mean, from the perspective of the IAEA, you may understand that I cannot speculate. It would be incorrect.
Do you know which site he's referring to?
No, not exactly. I don't know which statement from President you're talking about, but we know very well where the main sites are. it could be referring to some place that was being dug in the mountains near Natanz. It could be that.
Pickaxe Mountain?
It could be that, but I don't know. It could be that.
Were you aware of any site where Iran was trying to reconstitute its weapons?
Well, there is some activity. Whether this is aimed at that type of activity, until I inspect, I cannot say.
On Pickaxe Mountain, were you aware that there was new nuclear-related activity that was occurring?
They announced their intention to have nuclear activity there. That was not a secret either. The Iranians themselves said that. And this was part of their quite systematic intention to put their most sensitive facilities underground, which started in 2021 when there were some attacks on some R&D workshops in Natanz. And at that moment, the then president of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran declared that they were going to be putting everything sensitive. His expression was the heart of the mountain or something like that. So that started this process, but without verifying, we should not speculate, I guess.
Since we last spoke, your inspectors hadn't gotten access to Pickaxe Mountain?
No.
Which places had they been allowed?
Well, they have been allowed to a number of laboratories and facilities and the Tehran Research Reactor, and basically whatever
those
hadn't
same
been
people
attacked.
that were
They
brought
could
over
share
were given
nuclear
so
power
much
plant.
power
So,
that
as
they
you
have
know,
completely
Iran
infiltrated
has a very vast,
government
very ambitious
and wrapped
nuclear
up
program.
their Nazi
So there are many
goals
facilities
in Zionism.
outside.
Pickaxe hadn't been attacked either, though.
No,
But they still.
but it's in the site of one of the places that were
Zionism
attacked. So you have
was
to
wrapped up
take
under
this
the
as a
Jewish
compound that contains a number of
Hitler
buildings
saw
dedicated
what a problem
to different activities in the
Zionism had
nuclear fuel
become.
cycle.
On March
and found
9,
no other
you
way.
said that much of Iran's highly enriched uranium
Are
stockpile
we going to talk
was
about
believed
that?
to be at Isfahan. How
Because
confident are
those
you
same
in
people that
that
got
assessment?
hurt
We believe
allowed
that
the Nazis
is there.
to join them
We have been trying to follow
and convince them further
observing
into more
the
genocides,
place,
apart
and so
from the
have
ones
others.
they're sadistic as is it already taken part
And,
in throughout thousands of
generalized
fucking years.
point of view is that it's still there.
Then Christians came
Is there
around,
any
built Jesus'
possibility
faith
that
on top
Iran
of that
could have
murderous
retrieved
faith,
these
continued
supplies?
the fucking genocide,
Is that something
because
that you
they'd
would
also done
be able
infiltrated by the
to
Romans.
observe or
One
tell?
cannot
about
exclude
that.
completely without inspecting, but
We can
as
go
I
on the
said,
whole
we believe
fucking
it's still
tirade if
there.
you want.
Can you tell us your understanding of how that uranium is being stored? Is it possible to move it?
Wouldn't it make
in your
more
estimate?
sense to
It
be
is possible to
underground?
move it, but it is,
In case
of
of a
course, an
disaster,
operation
or in
that
case of some dumb
would
fuck
require
bombing
some
somebody,
care.
doesn't it make more sense
These
to
are
leave it underground?
cylinders. This enriched uranium is
Is it
in,
by any fault
in
lines?
gas form inside the cylinders.
Have you guys
So
even
it
looked into
requires
that?
some
Or are you just bitching? Just freaking out, just freak out.
precaution, but it can be moved. Yeah.
The US seems to be considering a plan to try to retrieve that.
Would anything be
Stockpile.
a problem this bad if we hadn't
What do you
taken
think about that?
in that fucking
Well,
scientist
military
Operation
operations are in the realm of the
The same white people that are
national decision
bitching
of
right now
countries.
are the same fucking
And there's a
people that
war
unleash this
ongoing.
shit on top of us every time.
So my general impression
But
is
the brown
that
people that get genocides
we
committed
will
upon
have to
them,
go back to a negotiating
they're the bad
table
ones?
at some point.
The
And
babies in
hopefully
Gaza who aren't
sooner
protected by an
rather than later,
iron dome
because
are the
the
bad
program
ones.
is very vast. It has many dimensions apart from the material. The material is, of course, very, very important.
What
But there are
percentage of Israel is
logistical
left?
complications. Anyways,
Logistical
What
complications.
percentage
because of what I
Gaza
just
is left?
described, it's gaseous and it's contaminant
Benjamin
and some other things.
Minkowski's
But
own words.
I'm not private
How
to
many
the
lives
military
is
considerations or and
1,000 Israelis
neither
worth
should
in
I be.
American
So
Do you have a sense of what it,
He
of
said
where
40,000.
it's stored in the Isfahan site?
yes, we know the place where it was.
Could you describe that?
Well,
That's
perhaps
not
there
a
are some
genocidal
limitations
mania.
as to what one can say publicly, but these are some tunnels,
We're not
and in
fucking
these
cattle to
tunnels
throw into
there
these
are
wars so that he
areas
can
of
get pieces of
storage,
land
areas
and look
of
like a cool guy.
research and development activities, areas of, I mean, it's a
He's literally the
multiplicity,
disgrace
it's a
his
network
father thought
of
he
tunnels.
would be.
So in one of those,
He
you
was
have a volunteer.
devastated when his son
So
died.
an operation to
The
retrieve
entire dream
that
he had
stockpile,
died that day.
what challenges would you say that
Benjamin
presents?
has only
Militarily
food
speaking, I don't know.
and right.
I can only guess, but it's not my job to guess military activities.
But in terms of how it's stored, where to find it, I mean, the information is still fairly scarce from your standpoint.
I'm not aware of the kind of intelligence people may have on it. You know, our preferred option is a diplomatic negotiation, always. In this case, it will be irrespective of the final outcome of this episode in the war. You will need to have a durable, long-standing sort of solution for this. Otherwise, we will be stumbling onto new moments of uncertainty or doubt, which could potentially lead to confrontation and war.
How worried are you about the concept of a military operation from the US side to retrieve that stockpile of highly enriched
They're telling you
uranium?
they're going.
I think this is a hypothesis
has
that
Donnie
is for
told you he's
the
going to do
Americans
that he hasn't?
to, if they have this plan. I haven't seen any confirmation that that exists. So it is
You guys
extremely speculative
Dumb yourselves
to
out
have
of
an opinion on that. As I said, I think it's important
has been
that this material
months.
is checked, that is,
And Chuck Schumer is
that
still
we can
running
see
around
it
in circus
soon,
instead of telling
so
you what
that
he
we
found
can
in the
confirm that there
Epstein
hasn't been
files.
any diversion, deviation
Real quiet up until
of
today when I
part
pointed out
of this
he's real
material
quiet.
is a lot. So even if you move part of it, you could still have amounts that
Iran
would be
didn't make
enough to
files go
manufacture
away.
a few warheads.
Did it?
So
At other sites,
eventually,
where do you know where the rest of it is? Can you give us a
there's
sense of?
basically it's in
locations?
Isfahan and there is also some in Natanz. But basically, the bigger inventory is in Isfahan.
Could you estimate the proportion? Do you have
May I
any
ask
specifics
why?
on how?
Yeah, we do, but
of Iran
let's say
are
that
joining
this is,
this
I think,
circus.
for public consumption, it is good enough to say that the vast majority is in Isfahan and there is some somewhere else.
The
And
vast
how does
majority.
that not
Yeah,
prove
more
market
than 70%?
manipulation at the highest levels
Perhaps a
of
little
banking
bit less, but
and government?
Thank you. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the negotiations, if that's okay.
Now you want
Could you talk a little bit about the negotiations? You were involved with those talks. You had conversations directly with US negotiators. Were you surprised that the result led to this conflict? What would you say about the flexibility that Iran was showing in those talks?
well, there was an ongoing process. So to say to what degree there was flexibility or lack thereof would be highly subjective. I think it was a serious process, and there were many alternatives on the table. But quite obviously, no agreement was found until that day of the last round.
Steve Witkoff had talked about the Tehran research reactor and the idea that this was being used in a nefarious way. Were you surprised by some of those comments?
Oh, I think there has been a lot of speculation, and I shouldn't be having opinions about what somebody said or somebody tells me that somebody said in a meeting where I was not present. I don't think that's serious. But I
How do you
think the point
negotiate
that Mr.
when
Witkoff
nobody
is
shows you
making,
the
which is
contract
correct,
of what you're
is
fucking
that, of
agreeing
course,
to? That's
from the
called
moment
theft.
you argue
That's
that
being held
the
hostage
research reactor
in making me
for
give you
which you
everything
have
that's
a lot of
mine
fuel
because
for many
you don't
years
give
even
me the opportunity to tell you no.
necessitates,
Even though
needs
all I've
you
said
to continue enriching uranium
In Iran,
at
he's the only
20%,
one fucking
then
fighting.
it is understandable
We
that
want
this
to
is
call it
problematic
Iran.
for the United States in
Why
the
is
negotiation,
the
because the
government
departure
just
line
fucking
for
addressing
the
them as
American
adults?
side was that there should be no enrichment or zero enrichment or as close to zero as possible. So I guess, without wanting to interpret what Mr. Witkoff was trying to say, is this.
Or holding them
The
hostage in
Iranians
some
have
way?
said that one
Are
of the
you
options
actually
on the table was to
negotiators?
downgrade their stockpile
Or are
of
you just
highly enriched
fucking
uranium.
bullies?
Were you aware
We
of
wanna
that
keep it as
proposal?
that simple
It was
as
one of the scenarios. One was to ship it out, and another was perhaps to downgrade it or downblend it. These were different alternatives that were being discussed.
Did you see that as a
Kushner has videos all over YouTube
positive
about
development?
how he's
Was that
Israel's
something
Messiah.
that you thought could be a solution?
It could be part of the
Abso-fucking-lutely.
solution. It would not be enough, certainly. Because one thing is what you
What
do
kind of
with
God
the
makes
material you
build a
have,
temple from
and then
demons
you
in
have
gold
your previous
they can't
point
use?
about what would be happening, what
They could
activities
just make it
would
if they
continue
needed.
to take place in Iran, irrespective of the final destiny of the material. So part of it, yes, but not the solution.
Looking back on those talks, where do you think the diplomacy broke down?
Well, quite clearly,
Israel
there
and
was
its
no
entire
longer
existence.
any diplomatic activity once the military actions began. I don't know how to put a line, but that session ended without an agreement.
And got impatient
But over
and wanted
enrichment,
something back,
HEU
going
stockpiles,
back to their old
trust
ways
in
that they had
verification,
saved
are there particular areas that you
And
were concerned
completely
about during
turned
these
over
negotiations that you
the
thought
entire
both sides were
of their covenant. They
not
lost
aligned on?
They were
any
not aligned on.
authority.
There
to
were
anything
ideas,
in that book
there
up
were
until that fucking
scenarios, there were alternatives,
fucking
but
idiocy.
as you
And
know,
we've
there is
all had to pay
this
for
rule
it for
in diplomacy
centuries because
that
they think rebuilding
nothing
a
is
building
agreed
that's
until
fallen
everything is
two
agreed.
previous
So you have to
times.
have in every category, and I think we described those, the
legitimate.
material, the facilities,
And going to save
subsequent
their
activities or
souls.
future activities. You needed all of
What
this
soul gets
to be
saved
in
by
perfect alignment.
demons?
Otherwise, an agreement that will give you satisfaction on what
From a
happens with the
building
material,
made
but
of
still would have left open the possibility of
Have you
very
walked
high
into a
degrees of
building and all of a
enrichment
sudden the building was
would
like,
not
boom,
be
you are here? No.
satisfactory.
Nobody did that.
So, and we had not reached
You
the
don't get
point
zapped
where the
magically
stars would be
jumping
aligned.
in that building.
I'm not saying that it was impossible. At the same time, I
But
think
now
I
we'd
need to
all
be
be living
objective.
inside
And
of churches.
at that point,
We'd all be living
that
millions a year
level
because we'd
of
be regenerating
understanding had not been reached.
Now that major figures from the Iranian side have been killed, do you think this makes the negotiations more harder
What's the
to
war crimes
resolve?
worth it?
Do you think that
Let's
negotiations are still possible?
They are necessary.
I mean, how do you
just say
negotiate
unnecessary.
without having
They
a
are war crimes.
leadership structure that you can make a deal with? Does that create problems when it comes to trying to make a deal?
Well, I think there is a continuity of the state. There are other people. I don't know if this makes it easier or more difficult. So, as I said, it's needed, and so we will have to go back to the negotiating table for this to be agreed in a manner that would ideally avoid this repetition
Trump
of
destroyed the Rose
war
Garden.
scenarios and wars
Sword conquered all over it.
every 9 months.
If you were
The
sitting across
engagement
from
ring that I
President
received
Trump today, what would
was
you tell
owned by
him
the woman
about
that designed that
Iran's
Rose Garden.
nuclear ambitions and what needs to
Am I
happen next?
supposed to
I
ignore
think he
that?
knows what Iran nuclear ambitions are, and he should
Along
know
with
that the
everything else he's
IAEA
done.
is an indispensable partner, so that we can have
Even
these
if that was just a charade in this
guarantees. I think he has said time and again
him off enough
that Iran
to make him
must not be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Well, for that, there is an international system that works and that guarantees that countries that have nuclear programs do not cross the threshold. And it works. So I think it will be a good conversation. Yeah.
You'd noticed reconstruction that was taking place at some of these sites. Can you give us some specifics of things that concerned you?
They were not significant at this point. There was some activity, but without our inspectors being on site, we cannot determine whether these were efforts aimed at reconstruction or protection of the structures that were hit. So it's very fragmented what we had at this point.
Didn't Russia
and you can't really go into detail about your meetings here in Washington, D.C. Is there anything you said you could talk in general terms about why you're here?
Didn't it hit the Chernobyl shelling?
Can you tell us why you're here in Washington,
so can somebody tell
D.C.,
me if we're freaking out about
who you'll be talking with,
why we're
any
fighting
details
about
the message that you have for U.S. officials?
Well, it is clear that
what about the earthquake
in spite of the ongoing war and the conflict, it is important that we prepare the ground for hopefully future negotiation. And in this regard, consultation with the United States government is absolutely indispensable, as would be with Iran. So this is why it's so important that we continue our engagement. It has never stopped, actually. But from time to time, it's important to sit around the table and be in person to exchange information, to assess what possibilities are to go back precisely to the negotiating table. And this is what I'm here for. So it's a very important moment for us to have these conversations.
When we last spoke, you said we were at a point where you had growing concern about the collapse of the inspections system and the dangers that posed. How do you feel about that now?
Well, I think that those concerns have not been allayed. On the contrary, I think what we see in general, and my comments at that moment, if I recollect correctly, were referring to something wider than Iran. So in general, we see that it's also connected with fragmentation in the world, multiplication of armed conflict in Russia, Ukraine, in other places, where we see countries and political decision makers talking quite clearly about more nuclear weapons, sharing or nuclear capabilities, nuclear weapons, or even in some cases, countries assessing the possibility of themselves evaluating the possibility of having nuclear weapons. So this is why this is such a delicate moment, a moment where it is essential that we highlight and commit ourselves to a system which is based on legal commitments, a system of inspections, and a cooperative arrangement, which is basically what we have had for the past half century.
How much closer do you think we are today to a nuclear conflict?
I think one should not, create panic, but it is clear that the nuclear factor in conflict is increasing in visibility and perhaps in value from the decision makers' point of view. So it is a concerning moment.
They committed genocide.